Le CPMA reflète la dynamique actuelle des migrations en Afrique et offre un cadre stratégique ainsi que des directives politiques détaillées aux États membres de l'UA et aux communautés économiques régionales en matière de gouvernance des migrations. Le cadre de politique migratoire pour l'Afrique et son plan d'action couvrent entre autres les sujets suivants. La gouvernance des frontières, la migration de main-d'œuvre, le genre, la santé, le déplacement forcé, la coopération interétatique et les partenariats. Il se penche également sur les droits de l'homme de tous les migrants et aborde des questions telles que l'inclusion sociale et toutes les formes de discrimination. Comment l'Union africaine peut-elle aider votre pays à surmonter des défis liés à la migration ? La gouvernance des migrants requiert des capacités, des infrastructures adéquates et une volonté politique de mettre en place des dispositifs qui facilitent la circulation des personnes et qui protègent les droits des migrants. L'UA conseille et met à la disposition de toutes les communautés économiques régionales et des États membres des outils qui permettent d'implémenter des cadres politiques tels que le CPMA. Par le biais du renforcement des capacités, des formations et de la recherche, la commission de l'UA travaille en collaboration avec les principales parties prenantes afin de collecter, analyser et diffuser des données migratoires de qualité, fiables et d'actualité. Cela contribue à l'élaboration de politiques et à la prise de décisions fondées sur des faits. Nous travaillons ensemble pour bâtir l'Afrique que nous voulons. Un continent sûr et stable où les migrations sont bien gérées. Les nations et les régions peuvent récolter les fruits qui découlent du lien entre la migration et le développement, tandis que le continent s'efforce d'atteindre les objectifs de l'agenda 2063. Contactez l'UA pour en savoir plus sur le cadre de politique migratoire pour l'Afrique, sur la manière dont l'UA peut aider votre pays à la mettre en œuvre et bien plus encore.
People have always moved around the world from country to country. Migration can take many forms. Workers moving between places to take up employment opportunities or start businesses, students seeking an education, or refugees and asylum seekers fleeing war or hardship, or migrants returning home. The African Union considers migration a key development factor and is working with member states and regional economic communities to ensure that migrants are kept safe and that there is a fair and understandable system to ensure their protection. Why is migration good and who benefits? If well governed, migration contributes to regional integration and development to build the Africa we want. According to the AU Labour Migration Statistics Report, in 2019, over 20 million working-age migrants moved around Africa. Over 80% of African migration happens within Africa, with the most people moving to find work. Remittances from the diaspora aid sustainability and economic growth in countries of origin. This also contributes to business opportunities and job creation in countries of residence. When people migrate, there is a transfer of technology and skills which fosters brain circulation in Africa. What are the challenges faced by migrants and how can we address them? As the world faces increasing instability from climate change, poverty, wars, health crisis and social unrest, migrants of all sorts are more and more being treated with suspicion, prejudice and even violence. The African Union and UN instruments ensure that migrants have the right to protection. The African Union encourages every member state to design and implement migration policies that guarantee the understanding and protection of migrants' rights, as well as clarifies the processes for safe, orderly, and regular migration. What is the Migration Policy Framework for Africa, MPFA, and its plan of action? The MPFA reflects the current migration dynamics in Africa and offers a strategic framework as well as comprehensive policy guidelines to EU member states and regional economic communities in the governance of migration. The Migration Policy Framework for Africa and its plan of action covers subjects including border management, labor migration, gender, health, forced displacement, interstate cooperation, and partnerships. It also addresses the human rights of all migrants and tackles issues like social inclusions and all forms of discrimination. How can the African Union help your country with its migration issues? Managing migration requires capacity, adequate infrastructure, and political will to put into place systems which aid the easy movement of people and protect the rights of migrants. The AU offers advice and tools to all regional economic communities and member states to implement policy frameworks such as the MPFA. Through capacity building, training, and research activities, the AUC works in collaboration with key stakeholders to collect, analyze, and disseminate quality, reliable, and timely migration data. This helps with evidence-based policy development and decision-making. We are working together to build the Africa we want, a safe and stable continent with well-governed migration. Nations and regions can reap the benefits of the linkages between migration and development as the continent strives towards the ideals of Agenda 2063. Connect with the AU to find out more about the African Migration Policy Framework, how the AU can help your country integrate, and more.
Les gens se sont toujours déplacés à travers le monde de pays en pays. La migration peut prendre de nombreuses formes, des demandeurs d'emploi se déplaçant d'un endroit à l'autre pour saisir des opportunités ou pour se lancer dans l'entrepreneuriat, des étudiants à la recherche d'une bonne éducation, des réfugiés ainsi que des demandeurs d'asile fuyant la guerre ou d'autres difficultés, ou encore des migrants rentrant chez eux. L'Union africaine considère la migration comme un facteur clé de développement et travaille avec les États membres et les communautés économiques régionales afin de garantir la sécurité des migrants et d'œuvrer pour un système juste et compréhensible afin d'assurer leur protection. Pourquoi la migration est-elle bénéfique et qui en profite ? Si elle est bien gérée, la migration contribue à l'intégration régionale et au développement afin de bâtir l'Afrique que nous voulons. Selon le rapport sur les statistiques d'émigration de la main-d'œuvre de l'UA, en 2019, plus de 20 millions de migrants en âge de travailler se sont déplacés en Afrique. Plus de 80% de la migration africaine est intra-africaine. La plupart des personnes se déplacent pour trouver du travail. Les transferts de fonds de la diaspora contribuent à la viabilité et à la croissance économique de leur pays d'origine. Cela crée également des opportunités commerciales et contribue à la création d'emplois dans les pays de résidence. Lorsque les personnes migrent, il y a un transfert de technologies et de compétences qui encourage la circulation des cerveaux en Afrique. Quels sont les défis auxquels sont confrontés les migrants et comment pouvons-nous les relever ? Alors que le monde est confronté à une instabilité croissante due au changement climatique, à la pauvreté, aux guerres, aux crises sanitaires ainsi qu'aux tensions sociales, les migrants de toutes sortes sont de plus en plus souvent exposés à la méfiance, aux préjugés et même à la violence. Les instruments de l'Union africaine et des Nations unies garantissent le droit à la protection des migrants. L'Union africaine encourage chaque État membre à concevoir et à mettre en œuvre des politiques migratoires qui garantissent la compréhension ainsi que la protection des droits des migrants et qui clarifient les modalités d'une migration sûre, ordonnée et régulière. Qu'est-ce que le cadre de politique migratoire pour l'Afrique CPMA et son plan d'action ? Le CPMA reflète la dynamique actuelle des migrations en Afrique et offre un cadre stratégique ainsi que des directives politiques détaillées aux États membres de l'UA et aux communautés économiques régionales en matière de gouvernance des migrations. Le cadre de politique migratoire pour l'Afrique et son plan d'action couvrent entre autres les sujets suivants. La gouvernance des frontières, la migration de main-d'œuvre, le genre, la santé, le déplacement forcé, la coopération interétatique et les partenariats. Il se penche également sur les droits de l'homme de tous les migrants et aborde des questions telles que l'inclusion sociale et toutes les formes de discrimination. Comment l'Union africaine peut-elle aider votre pays à surmonter des défis liés à la migration ? La gouvernance des migrants requiert des capacités, des infrastructures adéquates et une volonté politique de mettre en place des dispositifs qui facilitent la circulation des personnes et qui protègent les droits des migrants. L'UA conseille et met à la disposition de toutes les communautés économiques régionales et des États membres des outils qui permettent d'implémenter des cadres politiques tels que le CPMA. Par le biais du renforcement des capacités, des formations et de la recherche, la commission de l'UA travaille en collaboration avec les principales parties prenantes afin de collecter, analyser et diffuser des données migratoires de qualité, fiables et d'actualité. Cela contribue à l'élaboration de politiques et à la prise de décisions fondées sur des faits. Nous travaillons ensemble pour bâtir l'Afrique que nous voulons.
My job, I enjoy it very much. My contribution to conservation, it's something that makes me proud. Working with rangers and patrols, with the guides, with animal trackers. This is the best office in the world.
The growth of the country and the energy, it's almost duplicated in any other sphere of the society. So like coffee shops, art centers, you feel that energy. The energy.
My designs, the colorful patterns all over Rwanda and our tradition too. I love to go in the market and just watch people how they combine colors. It's beautiful.
Nyungwe National Park is a mountain rainforest. It's a park rich in biodiversity. We have 13 species of primates, more than 300 species of birds, and it's where we have the farthest source of the Nile. There is something special that we need to protect.
I'm proud of my country because the resilience and willingness to work hard, to learn from each other. Together, we'll go further than if we work individually. What's unique about Rwandan coffee is the altitude, the environment makes a huge difference. You get that smooth, refreshing taste. And we have won numerous awards.
The past has a big influence also to how I see Rwanda. For example, I use Intore, the traditional dancers. It's beautiful and it's graceful. So that's what I wanted to explain it in my clothes. It's graceful but strong at the same time.
There's a word that we use called agaciro. Agaciro means the idea of self-worth, self-respect, and it translates in everything that we do.
Agaciro means the dignity of Rwandans. Working together, put efforts together, it makes me proud to be Rwandan.
Agaciro for me, it's a very powerful word which has so much meaning. Be grateful, be respectful, be resilient, be an example. There is a new change, there is a new Rwanda being created, and I'm part of it.
There's an energy that's out there, welcoming every single person. Come visit Rwanda, walk the street, talk to the people. You'll be amazed what you discover.
Rwanda is a land of dream.
The world has gone quiet. Our borders have closed. The skies are empty, but our hearts still beat loudly for connecting the world to our culture, our history, and our natural beauty. We stand for unity, for being together. That's why we know this difficult time will pass. And when it does, we'll greet our friends and family with the biggest smiles and the tightest hugs. We'll travel the world again, exploring new destinations, feeling that rush of adrenaline. We'll discuss matters of the world and exchange ideas. We'll dress up, go out, and taste new delights. We'll climb that mountain, swim those waters, and trek to experience the wonders of nature. But for now, let's stay home and stay safe. The world will open for business once more. And when it does, we'll be waiting with open arms. We can't wait for you to visit Rwanda soon.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers, members of the diplomatic corps, distinguished partners, and also Rwanda government here represented at all levels. We would like to greet you this morning. We greet you in all the African languages. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the podium is now, the high table is now occupied with our high-level dignitaries. We are now going to start with the opening session. This morning, it's a morning of the ministerial segment. On the high table, we have the representative of the government of Rwanda, the honorable minister. We have the representative of the government of Zambia, Mr. Dixon Matembo. We have the representative of the IFRC, who is also the head of delegation and Secretary General for the Gambia. We have the representative of the African Union, representing Excellency Ambassador Minata Samate Sesoma. The commissioner will be represented by our sister, Miss Angela Martins. And therefore, this marks the beginning of the opening session. I have the honor, honorable ministers, to invite to the podium the representative of the African Union, Madam Angela Martins, to come and provide the opening remarks. You have the floor, madam.
Thank you, Mr. Program Director. Good morning, Excellencies and ladies and gentlemen. Allow me to read the statement by Her Excellency Minata Samati Sisoma, the Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, who would have liked to be here. She was in fact in Rwanda, but she had to leave yesterday due to reasons beyond her control. Your Excellency, Honorable Judith Wizeye, Minister in the Office of the President, Republic of Rwanda. Your Excellency, Mr. Antonio Vitorino, the Director General for the International Organization for Migration. Your Excellencies, Ministers responsible for migration in the various AU member states here present. Your Excellencies, Deputy Ministers from the various delegations. Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and Permanent Representatives at the AU. Representatives of Regional Economic Communities Secretariats, Mr. Alassane Senghor, IFRC Head of Delegation and Secretary General, the Gambia Red Cross, Mr. Dixon Matembo, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Home Affairs and Interior, Republic of Zambia, Chair of the SDC on Migration, Refugees and IDPs, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, His Excellency Musa Faki Mohammed, and on my own behalf, I wish to welcome you to the 7th session of the Pan-African Forum on Migration, PAFOM. To begin with, allow me to take this opportunity to thank the government of the Republic of Rwanda for the wonderful reception and also for graciously agreeing to host this important forum. I also want to thank the government for the wonderful collaboration and support that they accorded my staff and other colleagues within the African Union Commission during the preparations for this important meeting with the aim of making it a success. Further, allow me also to thank the International Organization of Migration, IOM, who have been our traditional and reliable partner in supporting us to jointly host this meeting. IOM has not only provided financial support, but also availed their staff to support the Commission in every aspect of the preparations to this meeting. This meeting is a clear example how an effective cooperation and partnership by different stakeholders can achieve. Again, many thanks for the collaboration. The Pan-African Forum on Migration, PAFOM, as a premier continental interstate dialogue, has continuously provided us with a unique opportunity to reflect on various issues affecting the continent with regards to migration. While migration trends in Africa have been characterized with evidence of increased cases of irregular movements of our citizens out of the continent, sometimes through dangerous routes, there is need for us to reflect on the root causes of these issues and how we can sustainably address them. This forum has over time been instrumental in bringing together various stakeholders in the continent, including the African Union member states, regional economic communities, the UN family, civil society organizations, and other partners within the migration and human mobility governance space to discuss, share best practices, and deliberate on topical governance issues on migration in the continent. This is with the aim of promoting a shared space where member states and relevant partners can meet and share experiences and best practices, while also further identifying common challenges and opportunities within this area for joint intervention. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, climate-induced migration is increasingly becoming a main contributor to forced displacement in the continent. The 7th session of the Pan-African Forum on Migration, PAFOM, which is holding under the theme Addressing the Impact of Climate Change on Migration and Human Mobility in Africa, Building Adaptation Strategies and Resilient Communities, provides us yet another opportunity for us to address an emerging critical driver of migration and displacement on the continent. The timing of this forum is very important since it provides us a distinctive opportunity to further contribute to the upcoming 27th United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change Conference of Partners, COP27, which is scheduled to take place next month in Egypt. While Africa is heavily affected by the impact of climate change through floods, drought, and other forms of extreme climate conditions, there has been minimum investment and support towards developing sustainable resilience and adaptation strategies. There's need for the continent to effectively develop necessary policy frameworks and initiatives to climate-induced migration and displacements at national, regional, and continental levels. It is also important to note that Africa is experiencing high rate of human mobility due to the insurgence of extreme weather events, drought and floods in some parts of the continent. These environmental changes have affected the livelihoods and mobility of millions of Africans, both within and across the continent, which is in turn has caused profound policy implications for sustainable development and human welfare in Africa. This forum, therefore, provides us with an opportunity to deliberate and agree on ways of addressing the multifaceted risks of climate change and migration as the continent navigates the post-COVID-19 era with the goal to build back better forward economies. For us, to achieve the Africa we want through the implementation of the African Union Agenda 2063, we urgently need to address the impact of climate change-induced migration and human displacement in the continent. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I wish to assure you that the African Union Commission will continue supporting our AU member states at different levels in mitigating the impact of climate change on migration and displacement on the continent. Through the implementation of the AU Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan 2022-2032, we strive to support member states in providing technical guidance and coordination, responding to climate change, and also in the implementation of the Paris Agreement by member states. Further, through the ongoing implementation of the migration policy for Africa, based on the outcome of this meeting, we will develop innovative programs that will aim at supporting member states in addressing the impact of climate change-induced migration and human mobility. We will seek to mainstream climate change issues in all our migration governance programs, both at national, regional, and continental levels, through enhanced technical support and providing interstate dialogue in this area to promote collaboration, experience sharing, and best practices. Once again, I wish to thank you all, especially our experts, who have done a wonderful job in developing a draft report that will be submitted to this meeting for consideration. I wish us all the best as we will be looking forward to work with the PAFOM 7 chair, the Republic of Rwanda, to implement the meeting outcome. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, African Union Commission, for the warm welcome to all the dignitaries here represented. And I would like to join in your warm welcome to also warmly welcome the Director General of IOM, His Excellency Antonio Vitorino, who is also on the high table. We will see him later on. Honorable members, the African Union is implementing the migration policy framework for Africa. This is an overarching policy that guides all our policy action and policy propositions. And in the context of that policy, we believe that migration is not a problem to solve, but migration is an opportunity to harness. With these few words, we would like also to warmly welcome other honorable ministers who are not on the high table, but who are with us here in the room. You are warmly welcome, honorable ministers, honorable deputy ministers, and honorable assistant ministers that are here in the room. We would now like to invite to the podium the representative of IFRC and head of delegation to also come to the fore. Mr. Alassane.
Thank you, moderator. Excellencies, honorable ministers, members of the diplomatic and consular corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, members of the high table, I respectfully follow the protocol of previous speakers. I stand here today to deliver a statement after 3 days of very rich discussions and engagement, not only between among member states, but member states and civil society organizations and other bodies. This ministerial meeting on migration and climate change comes at a time when there are changes in the environment and in the world at large. Facing the consequences of this for human and environmental security cannot be underestimated. The impetus to convene this conference in advance of COP27 gives many hope that leadership and vision are in place to navigate the complex demand facing us all. I stand before you today not only as Secretary General of the Gambia Red Cross Society, but as a representative of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, the world's largest humanitarian network composed of 192 national societies with 14 million volunteers. They are prepared and always committed and ready to respond to disasters and crises at local, national, regional levels. The IFRC and its national society often champions localization at national level as well as national ownership in practice on the ground. And as we speak, millions or thousands of volunteers across the continent are dealing with the same issues that we've been discussing during the past 3 days. In Africa, I am proud to say that nearly all member states of the African Union have ratified and created a national society that is either Red Cross or Red Crescent, that is an auxiliary to public authorities. Today, with me, I have African National Society leaders and secretaries general from all geographical regions of the African Union. For the IFRC, addressing the needs of communities at risk impacted by climate-related displacement is a global strategic priority. This is expressed in our Strategy 2030 and, of course, the Red Cross movement's ambition to address the climate crisis. This commitment already reflects our current reality. In fact, all across the globe, National Red Cross and Red Crescent societies are at the forefront and complementing the efforts of their governments in tackling the humanitarian challenges. They work locally with communities to reduce risk and respond to humanitarian and protection needs of migrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and internally displaced persons, and other people on the move. The work of the IFRC is guided by its fundamental principles of the movement, notably principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and independence. The special status of National Red Cross and Red Crescent societies as auxiliaries to public authorities provides unique opportunities to engage in humanitarian diplomacy and has been successfully undertaken in strengthening legal framework, regulations, policies relating to climate change adaptation at all levels. Our continent-wide localized and permanent presence is grounded within the communities. As Red Cross and Red Crescent National Society, we witness firsthand on a daily basis the effects of climate change on our people and communities. We are confronted with the call to respond to urgent humanitarian needs of the most vulnerable population, irrespective of borders, and working hand in hand with national authorities. We collectively have a duty to address the humanitarian needs of climate-related displacements. However, we should not wait until communities are displaced. We must take action now to protect them. As identified as a priority during the 3-day meeting, we need to invest in building resilience in local communities and strengthen local organizations. We must ensure that funding for climate change adaptation, disaster risk reduction, and early warning, early action are directed to countries and communities with the highest risk and with the weakest capacities. In conclusion, as auxiliary to public authorities, we appeal to EU member states to ensure that national continental legal frameworks reflect current and increasing more complex operational environments we are facing today. To this end, it is critical for EU member states to adopt, review, and implement laws, policies on disaster risk management that will adequately address the needs of people on the move. And I'm glad to see that in the agenda of today, there's going to be a discussion on moving from policy to action. Equally important is to the humanitarian needs and to respond to the humanitarian. It is indeed to put in place preparedness measures, investing in focus-based action and order anticipatory action that reduces the risk of humanitarian challenges associated with displacement. To this end, and for it to be sustainable, national ownership is essential, rooted in national plans. Local actors and local communities must be at the center of our collective action. As this Pan-African Forum on Migration is taking place as a precursor to the COP27, the recently adopted EU Climate Change and Resilient Development Strategy and Action Plan 22 to 2032 provides a clear roadmap and basis for collective engagement. Furthermore, as IFRC, we pledge our full support to the current and future chair of the Pan-African Forum on Migration in moving from policy to action, always in the service of most vulnerable communities. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, IFRC. At African Union, the SDG number 17 is not only the words, but we put it in action. It's at the center of all our programs and projects. And one Zambia, one nation. Join me, ladies and gentlemen, to invite on stage the representative of Zambia, Mr. Dixon Matembo.
Thank you very much. Good morning to you all. Honorable Judith Uze, Minister in the Office of the President of the Republic of Rwanda, Mr. Gabriel Masuku, Director of Legal and Corporate Affairs for COMESA, Your Excellency Antonio Torino, Director General for the International Organization for Migration, Your Excellency Ambassador Manita Samata, Commissioner for Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development of the African Union, whom I understand that she's being represented, Your Excellency Dr. Vincent Biruta, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Affairs, the Republic of Rwanda, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, Ambassadors, heads of delegation, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the government of the Republic of Zambia, I'm pleased to welcome you all to the 7th Pan-African Forum on Migration, PAFOM. The theme of this year's PAFOM, which is addressing the impact of climate change on migration and human mobility in Africa, building adaptation strategies and resilient communities, unveils an important opportunity for African countries to discuss national, regional, continental climate action solutions on the continent. As the subject of the climate change in our world today cuts across various sectors and policy areas, the Republic of Zambia is particularly honored to participate in this forum to learn from experience sharing and best practice on climate change, migration patterns, and trends in Africa. Honorable ministers, excellencies, distinguished guests, human mobility in Africa carries a long history and has been recognized as a key driver to the resilience and development of economies. The AU Agenda 2063 and the Global Compact for Migration Objectives recognizes migration as a development enabler and a strategy to improve sustainable livelihood on the continent. Nonetheless, migration induced by slow onset events such as droughts, desertification, deforestation, water scarcity, rising sea levels, and coastal erosion have increasingly affected the continent. In occurrence and severity over the last few decades due to adverse effects of climate change. Yet, the continent is the lowest contributor to global carbon emissions. The scale and trajectory of climate-induced migration signals that policymakers cannot address one challenge at a time in an ex post fashion. Rather, policymakers and member states need bold, transformative, and foresighted actions in two critical fronts: migration and climate change, which are important phenomena in the context of human rights, human welfare, and the environment. Honorable ministers, excellencies, and distinguished guests, as we explore into the ministerial session of the 7th session of the African Forum on Migration, I imagine this year's forum will alert member states and policymakers on the importance of protecting human rights, human welfare, and the environment, as there is an urgent need to factor the interconnected relationships of migration and climate change into long-term socio-economic development strategies in Africa. African countries can harness opportunities from the unprecedented challenge to prioritize programs that support adaptation and build resilience. But this will require strong leadership and an integrated and far-sighted strategy, as well as a big setup on finance. Africa will require finance investment in climate adaptation. Governments will need to mobilize resources both domestically and internationally and link climate-related finance with critical governance reforms. There is also an aspect of climate finance towards the provision of insurance to protect livelihood and to ensure the possibility of sustainable return in the context of disaster-related migration. However, such programs may do little to actually reduce climate change-related risks for communities. They may fail to present the actual loss of access to livelihood and may do little to allow communities migrate safely by choice. These factors directly call the need for member states to strengthen efforts to ensure active and meaningful participation in the design and implementation of adaptation policies. Successful adaptation and mitigation policies and projects are those that provide communities with access to resources and measurably improve the level of respect for human rights and ensuring human welfare in the midst of climate challenges. Your Excellencies, I wish to emphasize that policies and projects should expressively involve all stakeholders and should address human rights risks in a holistic manner. Such actions should be facilitated through international and regional cooperation with the provision of adequate and additional climate finance to address human rights impacts of climate change. Such an approach also requires an understanding of the potential value of safe and regular migration as an important adoption strategy to address the negative human rights effects of climate change. In conclusion, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, and distinguished guests, I take this opportunity to call on Member States to integrate climate considerations into migration actions while prioritizing the human rights of migrants as an aspect of climate finance. On behalf of the government of Zambia, I welcome you once again to the 7th PAFOM, and we look forward to the policy recommendations that will spring forth from the plenary. I wish you all the best and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zambia. Director General of IOM, it was great to be in your office in March to sign an MOU with the Commissioner from the African Union. Commissioner, it is great to see you here again, and it is now my honor and my privilege to invite you to the podium. Director General.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you, Your Excellency, Honorable Minister in the Office of the Presidents, Honorable Ministers, Excellencies, distinguished guests. It has been said by all, this is a very timely meeting, as we look forward to COP27 in just a few weeks. I would like to start by congratulating the government of Rwanda for hosting of this issue and commend its leadership in advancing the subject of human mobility in the context of climate change. At IOM, we are very pleased to see a growing recognition of the importance of the impact of climate change in human mobility and the impetus to provide innovative, sustainable, people-centered solutions and durable solutions, which is for IOM a whole of organization priority. The African continent has been particularly hard hit by the negative impacts of climate change. The latest assessment report from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Changes is a very strong and impressive reminder that climate change is a threat to human well-being and health of the planet, I quote it. It's a global problem that can only have global solutions because we all share the same planet. Through slow onset events, but also storms, cyclones, and various hydrometeorological hazards, all them are fooling patterns of protracted, prolonged, and repeated displacement, leading to increased vulnerability among affected populations. In a word, climate-related hazards are today a major driver of displacement in the continent, and in 2021 alone, this continent, Africa, shouldered almost 20% of new disaster displacements globally. Individuals and communities are experiencing the harsh reality of the climate crisis every day in their lives. It is affecting every aspect of human life, particularly when coupled with other pre-existing vulnerabilities, tensions, conflicts, crises, and economic development, and the challenges that have emerged through the COVID-19 pandemic, disruptions in the food supply chain, and now the rising prices of grain, fertilizer, and energy due to the war in Europe. The climate crisis is also undermining the continent's ability to achieve its commitment to meet the targets of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union's Agenda 2063, and focus on long-standing objectives such as the enhancement of free movement. It is therefore of the utmost importance to recognize and address not just the consequences of climate change on human mobility, but above all, identify the role that migration can play as part of the solution. We need to adapt to the impacts of climate change in a safe and dignified way that can enable peace and prosperity. This is necessary to ensure that effectively we leave no one behind. As has been rightly flagged during your debates among senior officials these last 3 days, migration should not simply be seen as a problem to be solved or a failure of or alternative to adaptation, but rather migration is part of a package of adaptation strategies in itself. We need to ensure that people have what they need in terms of resources, livelihoods, and access to information, so that they can make decisions as to whether and how to adapt to climate change and the environmental degradation, including whether and how to move with dignity when adaptation is no longer possible. Our approaches should recognize continental and regional specificities while building upon the ingenuity and capacity of local communities to adapt, to build resilience, to generate successful solutions. And I must say, African countries have been leading the way in developing policies intended to manage migration and protect populations displaced due to climate and environmental factors. The recognition that has been already mentioned by the African Union of the importance of strengthening resilience and adaptation measures, including through partnerships, is a major step forward. At the continental level, the Migration Policy Framework for Africa, the Kampala Declaration, and the African Union Humanitarian Policy Framework, and more recently, the Africa Strategy for Disaster Risk Reduction, are all key to addressing migration in the context of environmental degradation, climate change, and natural disasters. Significant progress has been made at the national policy level too, supported through the guidance provided by the African Union Migration Policy Framework for Africa. We must now prioritize and support the implementation of these national policies, emphasizing the role of youth and women in particular. I also recognize the leadership of the African Union in the launch of the African Climate Migration Initiative, ACMI, together with IOM, UNDP, UNFCCC, and the World Bank, because this platform provides a practical way for gathering data and developing solutions for addressing human mobility induced by climate change. We are committed to working with member states, with the African Union Commission and the regional economic commissions to ensure that African perspectives on and solutions to climate-induced mobility are giving the visibility, the attention, and the financial support they deserve. And that's where we come to COP27. COP27, the Africa COP. We must bring there renewed sense of an urgency. This week's conference here in Kigali provides us with a platform to call for 3 very simple things. First, increased climate change adaptation action and measures with the necessary financial resources. Second, strengthen support to countries and people most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, including addressing consistently loss and damage. And third, more inclusive climate action, mobilizing all stakeholders, from governments to civil society, including the necessary public and private finance. To conclude, I would like to congratulate the governments present here today for consistently acknowledging and addressing the impacts of climate change on human mobility and, above all, the need for urgent solutions. We have a duty to raise our ambitions. We owe it to the most vulnerable populations and to the young and future generations to come. We can no longer pretend that this is a concern of the future. This is a critical concern of today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director General, for these insightful words that have inspired us. We now move on to the next speaker. Before I invite you, Honorable Minister, we would like to inform you that in the room, in the house, here we have member states. This is how your room is composed. We've got member states, mainly the ministries of foreign affairs, the ministries of environmental affairs, the ministries of interior and home affairs, or ministries of home affairs. This is the composition, Honorable Minister. But we've got also members from academia. We have the civil society organizations. We have the trade unions in the room. We have the experts from all type of disciplines who have experience in policy development and research. We have, Honorable Minister, also members of the media. We have the United Nations organizations here represented. We've got the REX in the room. So this is how your room, this meeting is composed, Honorable Minister. And with those few words, we would like to invite you to the podium to deliver your opening remarks.
Thank you, MC and Director of the meeting. Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, distinguished heads of delegations, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's my pleasure this morning, on behalf of the government of Rwanda, to welcome you all to Kigali to this 7th Pan-African Forum on Migration. For those who are visiting Rwanda for the first time, welcome, and please feel at home. As government of Rwanda, we have been privileged to host the 7th Pan-African Forum on Migration. And over the past 3 days, our senior officials have been deliberating on this very important theme of addressing the impact of climate change on migration and the human mobility in Africa, building adaptation strategies and resilient communities. Discussions about this theme have been long overdue, and I'm certain that, like you, my fellow colleagues are determined to put more emphasis on the outcomes and recommendations that shall commit to implementing them very urgently. The senior officials have been deliberating on the impact of climate change on migration and human mobility on our continent, the gaps faced, opportunities, and experiences from the African Union member states and the regional economic communities on this matter. Excellencies, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it is evident that our continent is experiencing changes in average temperature, shifts in seasons, and an increasing frequency of extreme weather and other climate-related changes. I would like to note that the faster the climate changes and the longer adaptations efforts are put off, the more challenging and expensive it will be. Climate change as a driver for migration demands us to find solutions for migration in the context of natural disasters and climate change. Negative effects of climate change are already having an impact on settlements and economic areas and are consequently influencing migration movements. It is therefore important that our governments, researchers, climate and migration organizations continue to identifying and rectifying knowledge gaps on climate change and migration, and share best experiences in forums like this one. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, let me take this opportunity to thank the African Union Commission for organizing this forum, and to all member states and estimated partners for honoring our invitation. I believe that this ministerial meeting session shall generate great ideas that shall inform and influence our policies in our respective countries. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your kind attention. I wish you all fruitful deliberations. Thank you.
What an honor to have a minister from the high office, a minister from the office of the President of the Republic of Rwanda. We thank you, Honorable Minister, for gracing this occasion, for gracing PAFOM with your presence, and other ministers that are here that we will see at a later stage. Honorable ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, this brings us to the end of the opening session for this segment of PAFOM, and what follows next would be a documentation, another form of documentation of this occasion. It is going to be a group photo, and colleagues are going to lead us and show us where the group photo will be happening. They are already showing us, they say the group photo is right here in the room at, it is my now singular honor to request the distinguished high table to kindly come to the staircases here. And our protocol is going to assist us how we do this. But I will also invite the the ministers and deputy ministers that are in the room to also come to the fore so that we document this occasion. The deputy ministers, the ambassadors, the ministers. So I'm going to request the Minister Mozambique to kindly also come to the fore. Also, I'm going to request Minister Dr. Muchawa Maria to also come to the fore. And ambassadors that are in the room to also come to the fore, but also the heads of delegations to also please come to the fore. From the UN organizations, the heads of delegation, Mr. Putikali, but also, yes, the heads of delegations to also come to the fore. We have another space here at the top. We have another step. All other heads of delegations to also come to the fore. And all other high-level experts to also come to the fore. Yes. Yes. We are now almost ready. Honorable members, we're going to request you to go for. We are on a coffee break right now. We go for coffee break and we request all the distinguished ladies and gentlemen to be seated right here at 11:40 so that we can start our next session.